We're going to run a quick sound check, make sure our audio is good and everybody can hear us. If you could write into the question pane that you can hear us okay, we would appreciate it. Quick hello from Justin and MK.
Go ahead, MK, take it away.
Hello, hello.
A little bit more into the mic.
Hello.
All right, good.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
All right, great. If somebody could let us know that they can hear us okay into the chat question box. Perfect. I can hear you very well. Awesome. Thank you, Ingo. All right, so we will get started right now. This is Collaborator 301, part of SmartBear Academy for Collaborator, the free training. And for a couple announcements before we get started and dive right into the training, we will be having our first user conference, SmartBear Connect, this September 12th to 13th, here in Boston. Day one, there's different interactive product training classes. Day two is some insights from SmartBear customers, industry experts, different speaking events. I will put the link into the question box so you're able to view, register, buy tickets there. You can view the schedule. But we'd love to have you guys join. We'd love to meet all of our customers. We're looking forward to our first user conference. For some housekeeping, this class is being recorded. You do have a handout that you can download. Doesn't look like it's appearing into the handout section, so I will resave it for you. So I'll get that to you when I'm done with the intro. And just make this class as interactive as possible. We love your questions. Justin's here to answer anything that that you have, and we'll get to as many as we can. So just put your questions into the questions pane. And just answer the exit survey at the end of the class, because we would also like to be able to build off of these classes, have some future topics that you want to hear as our customers. So without any further delay, one more announcement, sorry, about our...
There will be a delay, sorry.
Sorry about our free training. This is our end of the quarterly class. We do the 101, 201, and 301, so everyone who's attended all three of these classes will receive their graduate certificate. So we will get those out early July to everyone who's attended all three classes, and we'll be starting up our 101 next month in July again, so you can attend 101, 201, and 301 again. And then we do have one of our training partners that has some advanced training options. Contact us at customers@smartbear.com if you're interested in learning more about that from our partner release team. So, met myself, Dana, Customer Education. Next to me, we have Justin Collier, Product Owner with Collaborator, and next to him, we have a special guest, MK Sullivan, here to just give a quick hello. She has recently moved into a new role here at SmartBear within the Customer Success team, so quick hello from her, and then I'll hand it over to Justin for the agenda.
Awesome. Thank you, Dana. Yes. Hello to everyone, and I am the Collaborator Customer Success Manager. Nice to meet you all.
So why don't you tell us what you do, MK?
Sure. So a brief little overview of what I do. I am basically the internal advocate for every Collaborator customer here in SmartBear. So any support tickets, issues, license-related material, trainings, documentation, I am sort of your best friend and your go-to person for that. So if anyone's having any issues, wants update on support tickets, please feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, awesome. So MK's she's been around SmartBear for quite some time and been with Collaborator the whole time, so that's really cool. It's nice to have her in a new role and advocating for the customers and making sure we're all staying on track. So that's really awesome. Are you going to stick around, or are you going to bail on us?
No, I'll stick around.
Okay.
I'll hang out with you for a little bit.
Cool. So am I up?
You're up.
All right. So I guess everybody, I'm Justin Collier. Hopefully we've had an opportunity to speak in the past. If not, maybe we'll get an opportunity here in the future. Today we're going to be talking about or going through the Collaborator 301 training. What you will learn today. So general administration tasks, users groups, that kind of thing. Configuration of templates, and whether those are notification templates or actual templates that are driving the review workflow, triggers, automatic links, version control settings, etc. So I'm going to touch on a bunch of stuff today, and then if you've got specific questions as we go through it, then feel free to ask. and we'll do our best to address those questions as we go along. And I think, Dana, you'll monitor the questions panel. Do you mind doing that? Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll go through, we'll address your questions. I'm going to really try to touch on a bunch of different things that I hear as I have conversations with people. I cannot tell you how many times through the years I have had an opportunity to sit down, talk to somebody, whether that's over the phone or in person, and they say, hey, we like Collaborator, but it would be really great if it did this. And it's done that, believe it or not, for like 6 years, and they didn't realize that they could do that. And so there was frustration, or they just wished that they could do something. And Collaborator had the ability, and so it was nice to be able to kind of point them to it. And then, of course, if we don't have the ability, then having that information is important as well. So I think that's our agenda for the day.
Okay, great. I'm going to make you presenter.
Okay.
You can dive right into Collaborator.
So let me get my screen turned on here. Hopefully that kicked on. I'm waiting to get, there we go, a refresh. It looks like the screen's showing now. And we are, of course, logged in to Collaborator. So let's start off, of course, we're on the home screen here. You guys should all be pretty familiar with this, nothing new. I do want to point out just the fun facts and Collaborator news section over here on the right-hand side. These particular areas are really great ways to just kind of keep up with what's going on. If you don't see Collaborator news, don't panic. Some organizations don't see it just based on firewall settings and that kind of thing. No big deal, but just wanted to let you know that if you do see it, you'll be able to keep up with kind of what's going on, training sessions, etc. So that's pretty cool. And then fun facts, we automatically generate fun facts, but if you're an admin and you want to go in and create your own fun facts inside of Collaborator, believe it or not, you can do that as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the admin area, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on there. So when we get into the administration area of Collaborator, there's a whole lot going on. There's tons of different things that you can tweak, and what's really interesting about that is it gives you a lot of flexibility. The downside is it's actually a whole lot to remember that you can actually go in and modify and change. So we're going to touch on a few things that I see, again, as I have conversations with people. So this is fun facts. I just mentioned that just a moment ago. We have homepage links, those kinds of things. There's really not a whole lot on the settings screen specifically that I want to point out. So we're going to move forward and get to the display area. Probably one of the things that people don't realize that they can do, and I think is extremely beneficial here inside of Collaborator. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see this. We've got our defect label here. So the term defect is a term that a lot of organizations or customers aren't really a fan of, but if you're inside a Collaborator and you're trying to flag something for a user to go address, that's how we refer to it by default, the term defect. And so a lot of organizations would prefer to use the term issue or finding or bug, I guess. Sometimes people use the word bug. Though I'd be careful with that term because an item that's flagged inside a Collaborator isn't necessarily a bug in your bug tracking utility. So make sure that you're distinguishing between those. But this term defect is, again, it's going to show up. It's a global setting here, so you can define that. And then also the groups that you see just down below that. So Collaborators groups can be used for organizational hierarchy, but you can also use them for projects or programs if you'd prefer to do that, or you could use them, kind of an and/or type of option. So that term group, if you're using it for project or programs, may not make sense to be called a group, and so you can tweak that here. And again, it's one of those things that a lot of people just aren't aware of. Now, the other thing that a lot of people aren't aware of, and I'll zoom back down here towards the bottom, is something we call the compact view. If you've been around Collaborator for a number of years, when we went to Collaborator version 7, we changed the UI a bit, and it expanded kind of the space that we use on some of the different screens. And so we have this compact view that kind of shrinks what we use. So as an example, if you were... And tell you what, rather than just saying as an example, let's show you an example of where you would find that. So let's open up a review here. And if we come down to the participant section, and I'll just add myself as a reviewer. Actually, I don't have any files. Let's find a review that's got some information in it. It's a little bit better here. There we go. Let me zoom in. So you'll notice I have like full name information here as an example. Versus if you use the compact view, it'll actually shrink that down to just initials. So it's one of the things that kind of helps to shrink the screen. In addition to that, if we were to drill into a file, over here on the left-hand side in the chat section, and again I'll just zoom in so you can see it, you got date information, etc. So you can kind of compact some of the information that's here and displayed, and so it just takes up a little bit less real estate. A lot of people aren't aware that they can do that. Now what's nice about the setting is, of course, from an administration perspective, you can come in and as an admin and you can enable the compact view, but also as a user, if we were to return out to my user preferences here, so we're going to go to settings and go to display, you'll find that same compact view is defined here. So I can use the admin settings here, or if I would rather overwrite that and go to a compact view on my own, it doesn't have to be driven from or come from the admin kind of global policy. So as an end user, I can actually change the view. So it might be something fun to play around with that a lot of people don't realize is available. Also, the diff viewer default version comparison, which you see here in the user settings. This is one of those things that when you're looking at the diff view of, let's say, some source code, which versions of the file do you want to have show up by default every time you open up that diff viewer? And there's a couple of different options here. Let's see if we can't zoom in now. There we go. So you've got current versus base or last accepted. What is last accepted? It's really kind of whatever you'd like it to mean, but the idea with our accepted option is when you're in looking at a file, you can mark that specific file as accepted. And if we were to go back and look at a review here, see if we can't open up that review again, and we'll go back here to our file. So there's an mark accepted checkbox here in the overall section. It's also on the individual comments, but if you were to check it in the overall section, then that's what that last accepted would refer to here for your diff viewer. The idea with the accepted option is it was maybe the last file that you it's a personal thing, right? So it's the last file that you as a user would have accepted and said, hey, yeah, this looks good, versus I guess the point is that that's the file it would display for you whenever you create your diff view. So that way, if several other files have been added since the last time you logged in, you would only see that file that you had previously accepted. So it would give you the diff view of the last thing that you would come in to take a look at. So again, what does mark accepted mean? You kind of use it however you'd like. Some people just use it as a way to flag which files they've looked at. So rather than changing their diff viewer, they'll mark a file as accepted. Let's say that there's 20 files in the review. I can go mark the ones that I've looked at as accepted, and then the next time I log into the review, it's very clear which files I've already taken a look at. So that's what that's all about. Any questions coming in so far?
Just had one come through.
Okay.
How to undo overall accepted?
How to undo overall accepted. I think you have to, in that scenario, actually add a comment to unaccepted at that point. But rather than saying that for certain, it's probably wise that we go back and take a look and get a response out to you to make sure we got the right answer. So
okay.
I'd hate to be wrong and tell you the wrong thing, and then you'll say, well, Justin said it works this way, and I don't want that to be the case. So I believe that you'd have to actually go in and add a comment, but rather than, let's just confirm that and we can let you know. So thanks for that question. So let's return here to the system administration stuff. This is one of those things that a lot of people don't even know that's available in the tool. And it was a recent addition. Actually, we added it in the I believe 10.2 release, and this is going to be down at the very bottom, called Company Logo on login and Company Logo on the home screen. So you can actually add your own company logo now to Collaborator. If you prefer, you could just put a picture of yourself. That might be fun. But you can put in an image into Collaborator, and we will display that image for you inside here on the login screen. So you'll see it there. And in addition to the login screen, let me go back here to my home screen. or I don't even have to do it from the home screen. I can do it here as well. You'll find where it says Collaborator Enterprise in this section right here. There we are. You would find that logo that you add to the tool would get displayed here. So again, it would show up on the home screen as well as here. So if you want to customize your Collaborator UI or portal, you can absolutely do that. So again, kind of a nice feature a lot of people don't know exists. And why would you want to do that? Some people like to ensure that their company logo is associated with the tools, the web tools that they're using within their organization, just so it helps their end users understanding, hey, yeah, this is one of our kind of corporate tools that we utilize. So that's what that is all about. So let's come back up here. We're going to go now to access restrictions. One of the great things about Collaborator is your ability to set a lot of different security items here inside of the tool. And it's everything from whether or not files can be added to reviews, or whether or not individuals can access reviews. I mean, there's all kinds of different security things. But you have to remember, when you're looking at security items for Collaborator, so much of this is going to be based off of groups. And so we're going to talk more about groups in just a little bit, but the idea is that you can group people together in some logical form or fashion. I kind of mentioned it earlier, right? So organizational hierarchy versus projects or programs. Maybe it's a combination of the two. But groups help to drive the security within Collaborator, which then ensures that certain people don't have access to reviews that you don't want them to have access to. So that's what we call group-based security, and so much can be done around that. Now, in addition to that, you'll notice, and I'll just zoom in a bit, allow subscriptions to reviews. That's what this whole kind of section about subscriptions are. So what are subscriptions? If I want to be added to a review whenever specific individuals maybe create that review, then I can automatically be added as a reviewer or as an observer, whatever it might be. It'll automatically put me into that specific review. And this is defined as an end-user personal setting. So if you were to go back to your settings section, you would be able to go in and set up or subscribe to authors. You can also subscribe based on specific files. Now, the interesting thing about subscriptions is that it will add you to the review automatically whenever it meets that criteria. And in some scenarios, you could be removed from that. In other scenarios, it's enforcing the role, and that's what that subscriptions mode, mandatory enforce role, as you can see there. It just ensures that people cannot remove you. So as an example, some of you guys know who he is, Rick Almeida, who runs our development organization for Collaborator, does actually subscribe to reviews. So every time a review is created, he gets added to that review. He knows what's going on, and he can keep track of what's happening with the reviews, and he does that through these mandatory subscriptions. So it's a great capability. If you're not utilizing, again, you can do that. It's a personal setting, and then from an administrative perspective, you can actually enforce it so that people cannot delete individuals from those reviews. The other thing that's also important, and I'm going to go down just a little bit, is restrict access to review. Now, this is when you start to get into specific security settings for those Collaborator reviews. So who should have access to be able to get in and see a review? And you'll find that there is an anyone option, there's participants and group-based, and then there's participants or group-based. So depending upon how you want to define things, you can actually ensure that unless they were a participant of that review, they don't have access to it. The other nice thing about setting up access restrictions is that your reporting will follow suit. So if for whatever reason, or let's say that you do enable this and someone were to go to the reporting section of Collaborator, they're not going to be able to run a report that contains reviews that they shouldn't have access to. So it will limit their ability to go in and get to data. So just a nice capability there. Again, restricting access, you can do it anyone, participant or group-based, and participant and group-based. So a lot of flexibility. Again, it all does tie back to those groups and security around them. We're going to get into groups in just a bit. So those are just some of the key things on access restrictions. And I know that you guys can open these screens and you can read them, but it's so important, I think, just to hear it. What exactly is that meant to do versus being able to just kind of go in and read it yourself or whatever. And I'll be honest with you, so many people don't actually ever go in and look at these screens, and so you just don't even realize that they're available. So this is a great way to just kind of run through it, make sure that you are familiar with what is available to you. I'm trying to think if there's anything specific I want to call out here. I guess review process is so critical for organizations, and so many people don't realize that they can tweak the processes that are defined inside a Collaborator. And I would say that in general, when I hear complaints or I hear people that are voicing frustration about Collaborator, it's so often tied to the review process and the workflow. And it's not usually coming from the administrators of the tool, but rather the end users. And one of the things that is very difficult or challenging for us here at Collaborator is we don't get to communicate to our end users. So we don't have a way to share with them, hey, these are the great features or capabilities, etc. And so really as an admin, so if you're on this training this morning, as an admin, it's important to make sure that you're communicating to your end users what capabilities are available to them. If your organization allows you to, or your processes allow you to be customized. I know that in some organizations there's a defined process that you have to follow, and going outside of that isn't an option. And that's fine, but in those organizations where there is some flexibility, just make sure that you take a moment to kind of share some of those or these features or capabilities with your end users, because so many people come back and say, oh yeah, that would be really great if we could have the tool do that. So you'll notice here it's just who can edit stuff and so on and so forth. Now, the one thing I will point out that a lot of people aren't aware of, and I'll just zoom in here a little bit, default review deadline, you'll notice it says 0 days. Review deadlines do not show up by default inside of Collaborator. So where does a review deadline show up? The review deadlines show up on the review summary screen. So let's go ahead and exit that. I'm going to put this in. I'm just going to put 5 days here as an example, and I will save that off. So now we've got a review deadline. Let me go to the home screen and create a new review. Let's see, restrict access, templates completed on. Oh, I don't think I got it turned on for this template. Oh well, that's all right. So the idea with your review deadlines is that you would be able to turn on those review deadlines, as I did there a moment ago. I didn't associate it here back, but they would show up here and automatically default. It's going to show up kind of in this section here. It's just a calendar deadline that shows up. It's going to send out notifications that deadline is approaching. It doesn't automatically close reviews or do anything like that. That would be a bad thing if all of a sudden all of your reviews started getting closed because people weren't meeting the deadlines. But what it does do is it does show up as saying, hey, yes, there is a deadline associated to review, and in addition to that, it will send out notifications as you approach that review deadline. So just a nice capability to mention. And then the other thing that's relatively new, I'll take some time to talk about, is being able to hide files. So what is hide files, and why would you want to hide files? We had a number of requests for people to be able to go in and delete files from a review. So as an example, I had a change set to a review, and it's got 5 files in it, and I want to delete 2 of those 5 files because I don't feel like they really pertain to what needs to be reviewed, or I don't want people being distracted, or whatever it might be. So people said, hey, yeah, it would be really great if we could delete those files out of the review, and then people wouldn't look at them. The problem that we have with that is that we believe change sets are atomic, and that they shouldn't be changed, and especially because if you go in and you delete files from your change set in your Collaborator review, now you have a discrepancy, because what happens is Collaborator only has 3 files and your change set has 5 files, and now things don't really line up. So if you were ever audited, that might pose a problem for you. So rather than allowing people to delete files, we added this hide files capability. And what that allows you to do is go in and check the file and say, hey, this file needs to be hidden. people don't need to go in and review it. So let's just go in and take a look. Where does hide files show up? So I'm going to go back here to this review, and there's no files in that one, so we'll go find one that does have some files. And you'll notice the review materials section over here. We can zoom in just a little bit. So review materials, and then you'll find the edit files button. So I'm going to go ahead and click on edit files, and when I do, we can zoom in. It says hide right here, so I could check the box, and if I have a bunch of files, it would show that as well. Now, what is important to note about hidden files is you cannot hide a file with comments associated to it. So if there are comments, it's not going to be hidden. If someone were to go in and look at a hidden file and add a comment, it would no longer be hidden as well. So don't add comments to files that are hidden if you don't want them to show back up. Now, the other thing, I'm going to go ahead and click on Done Editing here. Over on the right-hand side, we've got a View As Overlay and View As Separate. In the Overlay option, those files will be hidden. If you were to click on Separate, then that file would show up, so you would be able to see it. And people would know that file was there and part of that review process. So again, review hide files, the idea behind that is it does allow people to hide those files that they don't feel like need to be reviewed as part of their review process. But let's return here to the admin screen. Who can hide files, and let's just go in and we'll zoom in on it. So you do have capabilities. You'll notice authors, participants, and nobody. So if you don't want anybody to be able to go in and hide files, you just want that feature, kind of disabled, then you can, from an administrative perspective, shut that down to people, prevent people from doing that. All right, any questions that are coming in that I need to address at this point?
Yeah, one just came through. Each time you asked, it literally just pops up. Is there a possibility to enable authors to close a review in cases where few reviewers do not complete their review beyond a deadline?
That's a good question. So let's talk a bit about roles here in just a minute, and I'll hopefully address that question. So give me another 2 minutes or so. Let me just run through the rest of these tabs real quick and see if there's anything else that I really want to call out. And then we'll get into review templates and the roles part of this, and that's what's really probably going to be driving the answer to your question. So electronic signatures, if you need it, they are available. A lot of people don't realize it, but they are. Bug tracking, I mean, some of this stuff, I don't want to spend too much time on it, so I'm just going to skip it. There are ways to restrict file types. You can actually restrict files that can be uploaded into a review as well. That's something that we can do. It's defined as part of a VM option as far as which files can actually be attached to reviews. A lot of people don't realize that that's available to them, but you can set that up. So those are some of the different system-wide settings that I did want to take a moment to call out. Otherwise, let's take a moment just to touch on triggers very quickly. What are triggers? Triggers allow you to execute a script based on some event inside of Collaborator. So what might you want to do that would require a trigger be executed? So we have I wouldn't say a new feature, a relatively new feature called Archive to Zip. Archive to Zip allows you to take a review and archive the contents of that review as well as basically the details report of that review, and it puts it into a zip file that you can then store off on some long-term data storage device. And that can be done through the web UI. In addition to being able to do that through the web UI, you can actually do that from a command line. So you could write a script that every time a review phase changed, and let's go in and take a look at that. Let's say that the review got to the completed phase, then you would want to execute this script that would go run the archive to zip command line and save that archive file off to some storage device. And so that might be why you would use triggers. So you can do all kinds of different things with triggers here. Scripting, you can put it in, write it in any language you'd like, define that here, and then if that event happens inside a Collaborator, then it'll execute your script and do whatever you asked it to do. All right, so I'm trying to think. There's nothing else I really wanted to touch on there, so let's get into review templates, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about
We have one more
groups.
question
Oh, okay.
within review templates. So
Sure.
once you're in there, is there a method to create store multiple review templates and assign review templates to a document?
So yes, you can create multiple review templates. Can you tie them to a specific document? No, you can't tie them to a specific document, but you can tie them to a group. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. But yeah, you're not necessarily tying templates to a specific document, and the reason being is you can have multiple different types of documents in your review. So you could have, let's say, a Java file and a Word document and a PDF file all in one review, and so then which template would you use in that case? So again, templates aren't tied to the documents themselves, but templates can be, multiple templates can be created, so you can have different types, and of course then you can tie those to groups. So what about review templates? So many people just use the default review template and don't even realize that they can change the template. So this is a really important part of Collaborator, the template section here. It drives workflow. Templates drive workflow, and what does that mean? Well, how many people are going to be participating in a review? Is there a minimum maximum number that need to show up in that review? What are the roles of the individuals in those reviews? Are they authors, observers, subject matter experts? Is that the label we like to use? Are they moderators, etc.? That's driven through review templates, because review templates are what the end user sees and selects when they create their review. But you'll notice underneath review templates that there are a number of, 4 different things here that tie to review templates. And so you have to do these 4 things and then tie them back to a review template. So let's start at the bottom. We'll kind of bounce around a little bit. Let's start with automatic links. This is one of those features inside a Collaborator that I absolutely love. I think it's a great capability. And what it does is it allows you to, every time you type something into Collaborator that matches a regular expression, it'll automatically build a link for you. So let's just edit this. I have one I happen to create for Bugzilla as just an example. But let's zoom in. Here's our regular expression. Every time I type the word bug and some number, it will automatically create a link out to my bug tracking utility for me. Now, this happens to be an automatic link for Bugzilla, but you could do that for RTC as an example. Every time I type in the word work item and some number, it automatically links out to my RTC work item. I could do that with Jira. I can do that with FogBugs. I could do that with any tool that has a web UI. So if it has a web UI, you can create these links, and every time somebody matches that regular expression, it'll automatically create the URL for them. So let's see that in action. Let's go back here to our review. I'm just going to edit this review very quickly. We'll type overview. I think I've got it enabled for this template. If not, I'll do one different. So let's click done editing. There we go. So I edited that. I typed bug and some number, and now you can see that a URL link was created, and that happens to be in the overview field. If I were to come down here and do the exact same thing in the chat field, not but bug, we can add that. There's our link. If I were to go into the file and I were to add a comment in here and I were to click on add, again, I get my URL link. So this happens everywhere inside of Collaborator that it matches or sees that regular expression. So if you add this to your commit message, as an example, it would automatically show up and build that link for you. In the commit message, it would show up here inside a Collaborator in this review materials section. So automatic links are going to show up everywhere, and you can create your own custom field and make that custom field mandatory, as an example, and say, hey, what defect inside, or what Jira item, or what RTC work item is associated with this particular item that we're working on here, this review. So you could set that as a mandatory custom field and ensure that people are filling that in, and when they type in bug and some number, it'll just create that link, and then you'll have that mapping. So just kind of a nice capability I thought I would take some time to mention here. Automatic links, if you're not using them, they're really valuable, and I think your end users will find great value in being able to just have these links back. And then, of course, when you run reports, you can see that those are what the items we're referencing. So that's automatic links. Let's talk just a moment about checklists. Review checklists are tied to templates as well. You can have as many review checklists inside of Collaborator as you feel like you need, but only one checklist per template. I do believe that we will be making changes to checklists in the future and adding some additional capability. I've gotten a lot of great feedback about checklists over the last probably 3 to 6 months, and people are using the feature, but would like to see some additional capabilities tied to it. So we'll continue to build out checklists and what you can do with them. But again, as many checklists as you feel like you need inside a Collaborator, but then you're going to tie that checklist back to a single review template. So if I create a review with template A, only the one checklist would show up. Now you can also make checklists mandatory. So do they actually have to be filled in or not in order for that review to move to the completed phase? So that's something that can be done. And you can see checklists, like I said, are tied to templates. Custom fields. So custom fields, you've got 3 different options. You have review custom fields, participant custom fields, and defect custom fields. I think defect custom fields are a great way to help with process improvement. What that allows you to do is every time you create a defect inside of Collaborator, you can have or capture additional information about that defect. And then later on, when you go run reports, you can say, okay, well, show me all of the major items that were of a specific type, and then you can look at that and say, oh gosh, we had 15 items this month that were related. What can we do to improve our processes so that we don't keep having the same defects show up in our requirements documents or in our source code or whatever it might be. And that's defect custom fields. Review custom fields are going to show up in the review summary section. So if I come back here to a review and I zoom in here, this is where you would find your review custom fields. And so I happen to have one called customer deliverable. The other field is overview. Overview happens to be a default field, but it does or is a custom field, so it shows up here in the review summary section. So let's go back here. Again, custom fields, you can set them up. You can also make custom fields mandatory. I kind of alluded to that a moment ago. In addition to making them mandatory, you can define when they are visible and in what phases they actually are due. So when does somebody actually need to fill that out? We're going to be expanding this, adding a bit more flexibility to the visible and due by phases. You'll be seeing that in an upcoming release. So we'll be making some changes there to custom fields. Now the final thing I want to talk about is roles, and then hopefully this addresses the question earlier that came up about templates and how things work. So let's dive into roles. Can an author close a review if the appropriate number of people haven't participated? So I'm going to go ahead and just edit a role, and while we're kind of going down through here, I'll just point out a few things. So how was Collaborator initially? How is Collaborator designed? How are people meant to work inside a Collaborator? What's the workflow that a lot of people utilize, and that is really often, I guess, tied back to defects. And what does that mean for defects, and who can check a defect as being fixed, and who's responsible for it, etc. The idea with Collaborator is that an author will create a review with some set of files and ask review participants to come in and add comments and file defects. And when that review participant comes in and adds those defects, they of course get flagged with a little bug icon, and now that review cannot be closed as long as there are open defects. So the review gets assigned to or moves to the rework phase, and the author now goes and does some work. And when the author does that work, uploads that work to the review and sends it back out for the review participants to look at again, the review of course transitions to the inspection phase. But who's supposed to mark that defect as fixed? Is it the author who fixed the item and thinks they fixed it? Do they go in and click mark fixed? Is it the reviewer, the moderator, whatever? That's driven by this can change own defects and can change other users' defects. Collaborator is meant to be that the author would fix the defects, but not be the one to mark those defects as fixed, but rather it would be a review participant other than the author. I have had some requests that people would like to see an additional phase there, so rather than just having marked fixed, for the defect, have a mark fixed option that the author could click, and then in addition to that, have a button that says verified. And the verified button would allow the review participants to verify that, in fact, that item had been fixed. So the idea being that the author would say, hey, I believe that I fixed this, so they mark it fixed. And then the review participants would later come along and mark that as being verified as fixed. So that's something that people have started to request, and I definitely am entertaining adding some options around that. So let's continue to move down through here.
We have a couple other questions.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we could take those.
Is there some possibility to copy checklists?
So there is no way to copy checklists today. No, that's not something that is currently available in Collaborator.
Okay. And then one last one for custom fields.
Yes.
Also, new type date would be useful to have. This is a comment.
So a date custom field that was maybe a calendar picker, I'm assuming. So yeah, that's a great request and something that I'd like to see in the tool as well. So hopefully that's something that we can do. I haven't had a chance to talk to the dev team and figure out what it would take to get that in, but it is something that I'm interested in adding. So yeah, thanks. All right, so who's required to read all comments? If you have been a Collaborator user since, let's say, before version 9, first, thank you for using Collaborator for so long. That's really awesome. I'm glad to be a part of that process. It's really awesome, so thanks. I've actually been here for over 6 years now. I think I started right around version 6 of Collaborator. So if you've been here since version 8 or 9, I guess maybe, and before that, required to read all comments was set to yes for the reviewer. And so that would be, this section here is what I'm talking about. So the reviewer was set to yes, required to read all comments. And if you didn't go modify your roles and your templates, then what you basically have is a situation where every time somebody adds a comment to Collaborator, you're, of course, then required to read that comment. And so one of the big complaints that I had heard was every time I'm in a review, I can't figure out how to get the review to transition phases because every time somebody adds a comment, I have to come back in and read that comment. And we can't seem to move our reviews forward. So if that is feedback that you have heard, this is most likely the reason why, is because they're being required to read all comments. Now, I personally, so years ago, like I said, around version 9, we made a change to set it to the yes for the author, but everybody else is listed as no by default in the default template. But again, if you've been using the tool for a long time, that was not the case. I don't think it makes sense for most review workflows and processes for people to be required to read every single comment. What happens is every time somebody adds some benign comment like, hey, this looks good, people are brought back into the review and have to mark that comment read. And if you've got 5 or 6 people in a review, you're just slowing the review process down and making things difficult. Now, there are times where I think it's extremely important for people to review or read every single comment. As an example, if you're building ejection seats for airplanes, you might want to have people read every comment because you don't want to get that wrong. At least the pilots would appreciate it if you don't get it wrong. So that, should you be forced to read every single comment? It depends on the types of reviews that you're doing. And that's what templates are all about, right? Templates are all about giving you the flexibility to have different types of reviews depending upon what it is that needs to be reviewed. And if it's safety critical, then you're going to want a different process than if it's not. And that's what this required to read all comments is about. But I just wanted to take some time to mention that. But now I'm going to answer the very specific question about being able to kind of complete reviews. So let's zoom in here. Excuse me, minimum number required to finish a review. So what happens is that as you create these review templates and as you add reviewers to reviews, generally speaking, if you're a reviewer in a review, you are required to participate in that review. So as an example, I have 1 author and I have 5 reviewers on my review. All 5 by kind of default or the typical configuration is all 5 must participate in that review from start to finish. They must, participate. However, if you set the minimum number required to finish the review to, let's say, 2 instead of the default, which is everybody, then as long as 2 out of those 5 have participated in the review will go through the life cycle and will complete, regardless of whether or not all 5 have participated. So, can an author just close the review because it's past the deadline, etc.? No, you cannot do that specifically because it's very, I think, dangerous, I suppose, to have an author be able to close their own review even though it hasn't been reviewed, especially for that to get to kind of a completed state where there's no defects marked and everything's been signed off on. So you have to be very careful about that. But you can set it up so that way, as long as one of the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever the number of reviewers are, has participated in the review, then the review continue to move forward. So doesn't address your specific question from can the author just do this, but hopefully does give you an option for configuring. All right, any other questions coming in? No? All right, perfect. So we've got about 15 more minutes here to the top of the hour. And so I'll run through a few additional items. So roles, in my opinion, this is the most important screen inside of Collaborator. I would suggest that you really take the time to read through this screen and understand what's available to you from a roles perspective. Roles drive workflow, and roles are tied to templates. So when an end user selects the review template that you've created, all of their workflow is being driven based off of the roles that you've defined right here. So it's very, very important that you understand what this screen does and how it impacts the review. All right, well, let's get into the review templates themselves now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll just edit one of these. This will be fine. Review templates are here, and what are tied to review templates? Basically everything that we just talked about. You get to then select which items show up in that review template. So, checklists, are they mandatory, or are they not? Those are the kinds of things. Custom fields, defect custom fields, participant custom fields, the roles, external links, all of that is tied back to a template. Now, what's interesting about this capability is, I'm banging on the microphone. What's interesting about this capability is that you get to create as many templates as you feel like you need. You can have different templates to meet the different requirements for, let's say, teams. You might have different templates for different projects or programs. You might have different templates for the types of files that need to be reviewed, right? So requirements documents versus let's say some source code or maybe a test plan. You may want to have different templates for each one of those things. And in addition to that, you may have unique custom fields that need to be filled in for those individual items or for those specific groups. They might have specific custom fields that need to be filled in. And that's what the power of templates is all about. Templates allows you to control the workflow for each team or each project or program that you might be working on. So again, most important part of Collaborator is probably this section here. There's a ton of other settings, but this is driving your end user's workflow. So I mentioned earlier that templates can be tied to groups, so let's go take a look at groups. And I don't have a group created, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to call this one MK's group. We'll create that group, and we'll go in and we'll take a look at that. So we'll edit it. And when we do, we can see a few things here. I'll zoom in just so everybody can see it a little bit better. Associate with reviews. Can I associate a review to a group or to this specific group? So that's what that's all about. Will it show up on the review summary screen? Review pool participant. So if you're not familiar with what review pools are, review pools are based on groups. You associate individuals to the group, and then you can enable it as a review pool. When I create the review and in the participant section I'm assigning people to that review, rather than assigning an individual, I can assign the review pool. So some organizations say we have to have a subject matter expert on every single one of our reviews that's in security, let's say, that's familiar with security stuff. So what you might do is create a security review pool or group, assign those couple of people into that review pool, and then when you create your review, assign the review participant as the review pool. What that does is it sends an email notification out to all of those individuals that were part of that review or that part of that group and says, hey, a new review has been created, and it allows one of those individuals to come in and volunteer to be responsible for the review. And once they do volunteer, then it no longer is part of the review pool process, and nobody else would need to come in and volunteer. It drops off their list or their radar. So that's what review pools are all about. You can actually use review pools for subscriptions as well. So we talked about that subject matter expert example for security. Every time I create a review, I could just automatically have it add that review pool as a subscription. So a nice capability. So group admins, who's allowed to be able to come in and administrate the different groups, who can come in and tweak that. Group admins, just so you know, I'm trying to remember, maybe 10, 11 time frame, I can't remember exactly when we started really making changes to group administration. But group admins now have a lot more flexibility inside a Collaborator. So today or previously we had administrators and users. Now you have really kind of admins, group admins, and users. And group admins get a little bit more flexibility or availability to do things inside of Collaborator. You actually get to define what they can do. So can a group admin come in and modify checklists and templates? Can a group admin come in and modify roles? Those are the kinds of things that you can start to do with group administration now. You can also create parent-child relationships to groups. We talked about that as far as projects and programs, and so you can create these different child associations. Of course, who are the members of that group, and then the review template. So this is a newer feature inside of Collaborator. I really like this. I know that we're starting to get a lot of feedback. People are pretty happy with what's going on with review templates and being able to associate them to a group. Why would it matter? When previously inside of Collaborator, when I created review templates, if I had 20 templates and I created a review, I could go into that review and select all 20 templates. And so when I don't know why that's on. I disabled that earlier. Sorry about that. I thought I disabled it. So when I'm in and I'm looking at review templates and these groups, I could previously see every single review template that was available. And if you've got 20 templates, then it's entirely likely that your end users are going to choose the wrong template for a specific type of review. And so this allows you to very specifically say, these are the review templates that this group gets to use, and in addition to that, what is the default template that they would be using as part of that? So let's say I had 3 review templates. I could have 1 or 2 of them show up as review templates that this group could use, and then I could define which was the default template. So maybe, generally speaking, we do informal reviews, so I'll just default to the informal review template, and then if we're going to be doing a more formal review, I would select that manually as the end user. So that's what review groups are doing and how review templates are tied back to groups. Again, relatively new capability, but I did want to go ahead and spend some time talking about it. And then the final thing that I'll mention here is that notification templates. When you do things inside a Collaborator, Collaborator sends out emails. You get to customize what those emails look like. The latest thing that we have done with notification templates would be as it relates to iCal invites or calendar invites. If I go into a review just very quickly, and in the participant section, you'll find the iCal Everyone option. If I were to click on that, I can send out a calendar invite from Collaborator, and include start location or start time, location, subject, etc. But you'll notice that some of that subject is automatically filled in, some of the body is automatically filled in. It's filled in because of the notification template that's associated to the iCal invite stuff. So that's what is going on here. Again, notification templates are you get to define, and this is what's going to show up whenever you send out those messages. So just a few more minutes to the top of the hour. I think I've touched on all of the big things that I wanted to cover today. I think there's more, of course, that you can do with Collaborator, but I think these are the key things that people should be aware of. So hopefully you learned something today that you didn't previously know. And if you knew everything that I already covered, then congratulations, because you really deserve your 301 certificate, because you already knew all the answers. So that's really great too. And it's because you spend a lot of time in Collaborator, and so for that, I thank you. Just for being, kind of that champion inside of your organization and understanding how to utilize the tool so well. So, any questions, Dana, that have come in?
Yeah, we had another one. What happens if a user is a member of different groups and each group has a different visibility list?
So a user can be a member of as many groups as you want to have them in. As far as visibility list is concerned, I'm not sure if that means visibility into, let's say, a report or visibility from a template standpoint. I'm not sure what that is really referencing, so we'll just talk about both. We don't have groups enabled right now, but let's just go ahead and actually let's just create a new review. I think I just created that group, so it should show up. No. Let's go look at groups. Edit MK's group. Let's put some people in it. No, let's just add everybody. And see if we can't refresh this. There we go. So now we got that group to show up. This is what I wanted to point out. Also, I've got that review deadline showing up for us now as well, and you can see that here. So the group, MK's group. If I'm a member of multiple groups, when I create my review, I'm going to be selecting the appropriate group for that review. And so when I do select that group and that review, then I'm going to, from there, have the appropriate templates that might be tied back to that group. And those people that are participating in that review, again, based on access restrictions or et cetera, are only going to have maybe visibility to that from a security standpoint. If I'm also a member of another group and somebody else creates a review, well, then I would have access to their review that they created, potentially, again, based on security settings. Reports are going to work the same way. Do I have the ability to go in and look at reports that are tied back to those groups? So I would have access to anything that I'm a group member of, but other people, if they're not a member of my group, wouldn't have access to that. So as you create the review, you're selecting the group, which then drives kind of the security and access around that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but hopefully touches on it.
Yeah, Bernard said thanks for the clarification. So
Wonderful.
Great.
Okay.
We have just one last question before we close out. Can one review batch files?
Batch files. So yes, there shouldn't be any issue with being able to review batch files. We allow you to basically review any text-based type of stuff. You can attach it to the review. I don't know of any reasons why you couldn't attach a batch file to Collaborator, unless some security settings are preventing you from doing so, and in which case, then you have to, modify those security settings in order to do that. But just from a strictly text-speaking standpoint, we don't prevent you from reviewing any type of file. I think there's maybe some other questions coming in. I'll try to take a look.
Yeah, we got one. Do templates include flow control options? A must review before B before C?
So there's no flow control options inside of Collaborator. So as an example, review file A, then you can review file B, or no, there's no kind of flow around that inside of Collaborator. So templates are not used in that way today.
Okay. All right. Well, we are right at the 11 o'clock time, East Coast here, and we appreciate everyone's participation and questions, and it's great to have Justin here live in the studio here at Somerville. So thank you, and thank you for joining us, MK, as well. So a face to the name for everyone who will be speaking with her with different customer success focused topics and calls over the coming weeks and months. So thank you, everyone. If you have any additional questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, or that you think from think of later, just email us at customers@smartbear.com, and we will get to them and get them to the appropriate person and get your answer. And great class. Tell Justin I said hello. It's coming in. And
hello.
Greetings from Vienna. So great.
Carol.
So
hi, Carol.
So thank you everyone for joining. And we will be having the registration for the Future 101, 201, and 301 coming up onto the support page for Collaborator. So keep a lookout for that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you all for using Collaborator. Like, I really do appreciate you, choosing our tool to help you with your review workflow and processes. And it's really, it's been awesome to be here and to work and get to meet a lot of you. And again, if I haven't had a chance, hopefully we will get a chance to meet or speak in the future. So I am very, very grateful for your business. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Take care.